Hi, I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
Alrighty, all the way down Panther Point Lake, Panther Point, Swan Lake, all the way down to Cedar. All this area back in here, it's got a nice amount of bait that's working back in this area here that showed up. We have all this nice water that's come back. Quick little cold front that's pushed in here and dropped our water temps back, but that's going to recover as we head into the coming weekend. This area here should light up pretty good. There's been a nice good amount of trout that's being caught that's back in this area, back in here. So again, if you don't absolutely need to keep those fish, please practice catch and release on these as we continue to go through our prime spawn time for these fish, so we can really help replenish our estuaries. As many of those breeders and fish layers as we can get in back in the water surely helps our cause for the future. But that said, there's some nice redfish that are back in here in Cedar Lake all the way over to Twin Lake. All this area out here, work the shorelines out here in just a tad bit deeper water. Looking for your bait here. Two of the prime baits that's been really good here has been the Magic Grass by the Down South Lure, and your Mirrodines XL has done really well here, just working that bait out in just a little bit deeper water. The redfish have really been crushing those things as we've got more bait that's pushed in here, so that bait that you can match it, that Mirrodine's really matching that, as long as with the Down South has done really well on redfish all back in this area. Down here, Mesquite, Cedar Bayou, the mouth of Cedar, this little area right over here, you've got a bunch of shell that's over here on that left-hand side as you head into Cedar. There's been some redfish that are scattered out over top of that. Just with our water levels being up, these redfish have pushed back in here, and as that water level pushes up, you'll begin to get them against the shorelines. Work your top water baits back in this area here. Your Mirrodines have been good back in here as long as you're down south. The jerk shrimp, marker 54, has done really well back in this area here. Continue to work back in to Cedar Bayou down the edges. If you want to get on your trolling motor here and work down this, just work up and down the shoreline. You'll come across some nice fish that are up and down here. You'll find some scattered black drum, and there's some nice redfish that are up and down here. And the other thing is too, that Cedar Bayou is the dredge has begun. They've been working on that now for a few weeks, so hopefully here in the next few weeks to a couple of months that thing will be back open and water flow will be coming through it, so that will begin to really liven up the Mesquite Bay area and those bay systems that are close to it. So it's really great to see that as well. But continue to work up and down this. Look for your bait. Look for any type of activity that's up and down the shoreline here that's starting to really light up again with the water flow that's going to be coming in from our higher tides. Few scattered bait that's all up and down this area. You'll find some nice trout and redfish in this area. Over here in Carlos, all up and down the shoreline here, work these areas here. The water levels have popped back up. Work this area all the way up to the point and back down in to this area around the point here, down in a little area right here by this little mud island back here on the back side of Dunham. All this area up and down here, there's been a nice amount of fish that's flowing up and down this. There's been a great amount of bait that's working in there. Water levels continue to come up. Pay attention to your majors and minors during this time frame. That's when the fish have produced the best for me for around those time frames. Just keep up with those whenever your major is, where your minor. Just put yourself in a position where you got some bait working in the area. You'll find some nice redfish that are scattered up and down here. There's been a few scattered black drum here as well. And again, I've mentioned this in the past, that you can catch those black drum on those mirror lure Little Johns. They are scented, and they do pretty well for smaller bait there to catch a black drum on your artificial bait. So it is possible to do that. So if that's really what you're targeting, this area here has had some in it. Again, there's some nice redfish in here, and they like the Little Johns as well. Watermelon red specifically has been working the best here. Down South Lures has been working well here. Again, the jerk shrimp by marker 54 has been really productive in this area. Looking for your redfish. This is still over mud, and back in here you can throw your topwater bait. It's been somewhat productive. It hasn't really turned on completely yet as we head into our springtime pattern. These fish will start being more and more active on that topwater bait, but for now that you can attack them with those other baits and be quite successful. Down here in Spalding, all this area back down in here in front of these back lakes. Again, with the water levels being up, you can start to get back in these back lakes now. They're really starting to open up with the water levels being up. You can start working your way back into some of these lakes. This middle lake here usually has some nice redfish that work across that back shoreline back in here. There have been a few that's been active on topwater bait. They haven't completely just gone after it. They are, you'll get a few blow-ups or some tail slaps or some swirls. If you're getting that on a consistent basis, go to your double D. Put the double D on there and throw that thing back in this area here. You can get that thing down in front of their face and they'll go to attack that bait. If they won't 100% commit to that topwater bait just yet. So there's an alternative for that particular thing. Bring it back out here. If you got to find some bait working back in these areas here, then you can take it, work the area out in front, a little bit deeper water along these shell pads up and down the shoreline. They've all been productive. Redfish are holding around these areas right now. You've got piggies, pins, mullet, good amount of mullet bait that's working all up and down this shoreline. Throw you down south in here, throw your jerk shrimp in here, throw the mirrodine in here. They've all been productive back in this area, all up and down the shoreline here in front of these back lake mouths. There's been a nice amount of redfish, and you'd be very productive. You take your time and work this area really well. Back here in Turtle Pen, all this area back in here, work this little back lake mouth right along this shoreline. Right along here, there's a nice little back lake that goes in there. There's a lot of scattered shell that's in this area, nice little amount of mud. That's really perfect. A lot of these fish are still holding over mud. They haven't made that transition over to the sand fully yet. Water temps, still fluctuating somewhat. We had a pretty good stable water temps there for a while until this last little front that pushed through this past weekend. Dropped our temps back down, so that's still going to keep those fish holding over that type of structure. That shell, scattered shell, mud. We're still holding some heat for them. They can still get the temperatures that they want to stay comfortable in, but this is one of the areas that you really need to target. You got a little bit deeper water that goes in the mouth of this. You got a decent amount of bait that's working here, just enough to hold some fish, and you can scratch out a few redfish back in here, a few scattered trout as well that are running in and out of here. There's been a couple of really nice trout that's been caught back in this area here that's all been released as well. But you want to look for those redfish cruising in and out of this little area in that back lake. It's pretty soft back there, but it is wadeable. You can fish it. It's not a problem. Topwater bait up close to the shoreline with the extra water that we have. Work your double D in this area as well. The mirrodines, the soft dines have both been okay, but your jerk shrimp by 54 and the down south lure have been the two best, most productive baits in this area here. Continue on around here. Continue to work this, wade this area here all the way around to this point. Not as much deep back in this area here has showed up just yet. There is some scattered bait in here, and you might can scratch out a fish here or scratch out a fish there, but the most production has been back here up by this back lake mouth, and that's where some fish are holding. And just take your time, be patient in this area here. Again, work in a major or minor. That's been very productive, so keep that in mind when you work this area and you'll find some fish.
Thanks for watching. I'm Captain Larry Bell.